You're listening to WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network, singles talk radio channel, where we take a lighthearted and candid approach to discussions on the journey of relationship loss, divorce, parenting, being single, relationships building, dating, and yes, sex. Join our listeners and begin living your best life.
Welcome to our show, True Secrets of Life, with me, Ana Lennyr, family relationship and anti-depression expert. And today we have an amazing show, as the true secret of life we're going to have is the past is teaching us, not trapping us. To show you that I am right in how the past can teach us but not trap us, I have brought in today an amazing guest. He is celebrity historian Raffi Andonian. So thank you for coming in, Raffi.
Of course, it's great to be here on such a lively show.
I know. So Raffi, would you like to introduce yourself? Because you know I'm not the one to introduce you. You are a celebrity historian here.
Yes, and I got called celebrity historian first when I went on a local TV station, and I've done ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox appearances throughout the country in different stations, and the celebrity historian thing caught on, and, and really it's something that I do as a venture that includes media appearances, like we're doing here, public speaking at various venues. I've spoken in England, Mexico, here in the U.S., and big venues. And I also have my own streaming TV show, and I have 3 books on history, on different aspects. And I try to take the past and connect it to the present. That's really what I try to do as celebrity historian, and I think it fits so well with what you're trying to accomplish here today.
Exactly, right? Because in depression, you are so marked by the past that you are living in it. I mean, you just can't separate from it. And I keep telling people, the moment when you succeed to separate from it, you can learn but not repeat it.
Absolutely. In fact, I would say that if you don't learn about your past, right? Whether it's you as an individual or as a society, you are not going to learn from it because you didn't learn it, right? Exactly. And so the first step is you have to learn about the past so that you can take your lessons from it, right? And not be trapped by it, because otherwise you're definitely going to be trapped by it over and over because you don't even know it's around you, that it's working on you.
And you're repeating cycles. You just keep repeating cycles. Yeah. So I overcame depression years ago. It took about 7 months. After 27 years of depression, I succeeded to overcome depression, right? And I was excited and all that, right? And then I was diagnosed with a specific genetic mutation that some people said is 2,000 years old. Other ones could say that 5,000 years old. Everybody comes with their own perspective. And this particular genetic mutation is giving whoever has it 33 diseases and cancers, including depression. So I was born with this particular gene. And it was so easy for all my family to die from it, practically, right? Because we just repeated the same past, right? And yes, the gene was there to, here it is the possibility of repeating it, but we didn't have to get trapped by it. I was the first person who succeeded to get out. And I was the last dinosaur in the family because everybody else died, But here is, it's easy to find an excuse. Like, oh, it's a genetic mutation. I don't have a choice.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And you know about this gene. It's called hemochromatosis today. Or the Celtic curse, right? I told you about it. Because I want to tell everybody out there that it is very, very easy to be trapped by something that you already have inside you, right? So you already have inside you the trigger to be depressed and to have 33 diseases and cancers. At any moment of your life, I almost died at the age of 38 and I didn't even know I had this particular gene. I just knew the disease, the liver disease, that, it was fatty liver hepatitis or something like that, right? So that was triggered. And I succeeded to reverse it, not even knowing that is out there, right? But how easy it is to say, oh, I have this illness, all my family had this illness, so I'm just going to keep on carrying it over and over again. And what I did is like, no, I want to shut it down. My son has it. We already diagnosed him with that. But I want to shut it down for him. I want to show him what happiness looks like so he won't have to slip in depression. I want to show him what to do. And it's quite simple. It's about not eating meat and fasting once in a while and not going to salt water and, things like that for him not to repeat this cycle. So give us some examples from history of how it's easy to repeat things that we don't understand, or how should I say, we just ignore.
Yeah, there's a couple examples. Now, I would point to something that's very popular the last couple of years as something that reminds me of that is, historic monuments, right, and historic sites. Now, I separate historic sites from monuments. A lot of people think of monuments as, it's history, but not quite. I worked at Gettysburg, the battlefield. There's only one Gettysburg battlefield. That's a historic site. That's the place where the event actually happened, right? A monument is different. That's a statue or a memorial or some kind of depiction artistically that may or may not be on the site where it occurred. I mean, it could be, right here in St. Louis.
Exactly.
It's something that is to, people from St. Louis that fought in the Civil War. That doesn't mean we had a battle in that site. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So because a monument is a specific commemoration from a specific person and group that was behind that, that's a good example, I think, of, that's one group of people that is remembering the past a certain way. But that's not necessarily the only way, right?
A certain way,
right,
certain
because,
perspective.
Exactly, because there's one artist depiction, and there's a group that had an image for the artist, but that group of people may represent only one segment. They might be a fan of a certain general or not of a certain general. And usually that group of people is living in their present, whatever their present is, and they're depicting the past in a way that fits what they want to accomplish today. We do that today all the time too.
Subconsciously, not even consciously.
Absolutely.
We do that subconsciously.
Absolutely.
Right?
And so I would say that the trap there becomes, if we're looking at it, if we don't study what's behind the stories of each of those monuments, it's very easy to take it at face value, not realize it, and be trapped by whatever that portrayal of history is from that monument. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. And sometimes even, historical figures that were, extraordinary, like Maria Theresa, you find out things about her life that was not so nice.
Yeah,
right?
It's complex. That's
exactly.
right. History is complex.
It's complex,
Yep.
right? And you mentioned about perspectives of truth, and everybody has them.
They do. That's right. And that's part of what's cool, I think, about history. It helps you see that there are different groups of people, individuals, perspectives. I'll give you a funny example. So, a really one you wouldn't expect. So we give a lot of credibility to eyewitness accounts, right? I mean, you open the news, it's eyewitness this, eyewitness that. However, when I worked at the battlefield at Gettysburg, which is a huge event, it's the bloodiest battle in North American history. You got, probably 200,000 plus combatants that are there. So sometimes people show up and they think it's going to look like a football field. We're talking something that's thousands of acres, okay? And over the course of that 3-day battle, you have tons of eyewitness accounts that come out in the days after. People are writing letters to those that survived, to their spouses, siblings, whatever it is, their friends. They don't all line up. Just because a participant was in the battle doesn't mean that they experience the same thing. They're at different parts of the battlefield. They're confused. They're lost. There's a ton of smoke. There's all kinds of stuff. And sometimes there's even politics involved or ego involved. They don't want to look bad.
Yeah.
So your task, if you're looking back on that as a historian, or if you're me trying to, portray the battle or tour people around, is to try to make sense of all those different realities and say, well, what makes sense here to bring together in a way that's digestible, that someone can understand. But that just because someone was there as an eyewitness doesn't mean they're accurate, which makes it very confusing.
How crazy is that? Because you're an eyewitness.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. And it's super funny because I just had I've seen an accident just a couple of days ago right in front of me. They almost hit me, right? And at some point I didn't hang around. I went shopping, and when I came back and I asked a policeman, he's like, I was an eyewitness to this. Do you need me to tell you, No. He dismissed me.
Interesting.
He dismissed me.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Right? Because probably I've seen it from my perspective. Like, this guy almost hit me.
It's fascinating, right? That's kind of
I was
interesting.
like freaked out. It's like, I'm going to take my revenge on him. But this is just an accident.
I love it.
It's just an accident, right? But from my perspective, it's like, thank God he didn't hit me.
Right.
Right?
That's
so,
right.
Yeah, so little things like that you see, the truth and the perspective very different of the same truth. And a lot of us mentors, we show people different truths. And we give them sometimes even choices. Which one sounds better for you? Option 1, option 2, or option 3? Choose your truth.
Interesting. Right. And so you're choosing an avenue toward a particular truth that you're looking for.
You choose to be angry and revengeful on your ex-husband who left 20 years ago and who is going on with his life just fine, and you're still suffering from heartbreak and depression today after 20 years?
Yeah.
Choose your truth. That person was not meant for you. Now move on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Take the steps to just get rid of the pain, okay? Find the strategies too, and that's it. Stop holding on.
And you're providing the tools for them to be able to do so.
Exactly, because it's easy to say that. And in the meantime, in your heart, you're just, so guarded. You're afraid of every guy out there who looks like your ex-husband or who doesn't even look like husband, but you don't even remember how he looks like. And these things we do so unconsciously, right? I met a girl in a networking event. She's absolutely magnificent. Her name is Cindy. Guess what? She looks like somebody who hurt me a few years ago, really bad, interfere in my life, interfere in my family. And she looks like her, plus has the same name as that person. Knowing the trap that I got myself into. And this is a great woman, right? This is a great woman. I knew that the moment when I met her, I already gave her the energy of, I hate you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
The past took over my present.
That's
Very
interesting.
simple.
Right.
It just trapped me. It just trapped me into an energetic. It's like, you look like her. You have the same name with her. I hate you. Right?
Yeah.
Very easy to do this unconsciously. And realizing this, I said, whoa, 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 whoa. That was long time ago, right? I don't even have to get trapped by this particular situation. So I actually make effort to praise her because she's an extraordinary woman. She has an extraordinary coaching program. She works for extraordinary people. I made actually, like, oh my God, Cindy, you're amazing. I'm so happy to meet you. I made efforts consciously to get out of my past that was messy and had nothing to do with this woman.
Yeah.
Right? This is how easy it is to get trapped. Even when you're learning the lesson, but just consciousness to bring up him. For anybody just joining in, you are listening to True Secrets of Life radio show with me, Ana Lennyr, anti-depression expert and family relationship mentor, and with our celebrity historian today, guest Raffi Andonian, who is trying to get us to debunk one secret of life. The past is teaching us, not trapping us.
I'm happy to be here talking history in a very interesting, unique context, right?
Exactly. So,
can I add something on that? What you just said earlier on,
go.
When you talk about the past trapping and the way people project over, when I worked at Gettysburg, again, I know I keep referring to it. I worked at different sites too, I promise, but I spent a lot of time there. And sometimes what would happen is, it's a Civil War battlefield, right? And what would happen is people would sometimes come into the information desk, the visitor center, and let's say I happen to be at the information desk. I'm not out in the field doing programs or tours, and they're going to ask me a question sometimes about, I had a ancestor that fought here, okay, or so they think.
Okay.
They're not always right. They think they did, but let's pretend they are. And we had the databases, the records to be able to look up and confirm. Number one, where did that soldier fight and what battles in the Civil War, and number two, if they were at Gettysburg, right? So I remember one time we look up the records, and it turns out that the individual, the soldier, had left the army prior to the Battle of Gettysburg. Because Gettysburg takes place a little more than 2 years into the war.
Okay.
And he had already left the army. And this person in front of me got so mad and was trashing the records and was saying, no, it can't be because, my grandma told me this and my grandma told me that. And I was thinking, your grandma wasn't around during the Civil War. The Civil War was 160 years ago at this point. And for you to be so tied up in his view, the honor of himself because of what his family person did, his ancestor did 7 generations ago.
Exactly.
To me, he wasn't letting go of that past.
Yes.
And why it affected him so much, I couldn't understand, because I wasn't sitting there judging the guy because of someone 7 generations ago who left the army sooner than he should have in his view. Plus, the guy still fought in the war. He just was in the Gettysburg, but he saw it as a dishonor to himself that his ancestor wasn't in the biggest battle of the war. And taking it personally like that, to me, was a great example of the past trapping his present and his current identity.
Yes. And his current identity. He was living with something that somebody made the decision 7 generations ago. Are you kidding me?
And you'd be amazed how often this happens in something like the Civil War. I didn't have family here during the Civil War. My family came here in the 60s and 80s, depending on which side you look at. And I'm the first generation born here. So I can't say I was tied up that way. But other folks, they would just be so tied up in fighting whether their ancestors were right or wrong or honorable or dishonorable and this whole thing. And I always told people, look, in any family, you look back generations enough, as you know, the family tree grows exponentially because every time you go back, there's obviously more and more. Yeah. Of course, there's going to be people in there that are both good and bad. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of things. And I'm not saying that's you, but sometimes what happens is people look toward the past looking for validation of their present, and that becomes a problem, I think.
And for a way to identify with.
That's right. That's right. And what happens is now you can inaccurately depict the past and or use the past as a way to trap your present, as you're pointing out.
Yeah. And it was super funny because when I found out I have this particular gene that we talked about, this hemochromatosis gene, the Celtic curse, I'm like, I'm Viking, yes! And I look like Viking, right? And I'm like, if you look at me, I love it. I am like Viking, and I have the energy of a Viking. And I'm like, yes, I knew it. I knew it's some kind of warrior inside me. This is how I overcame depression. I help others today. I knew it. I just knew it. So here it is. If I would have known that, I would have never considered myself a Viking.
I love it.
Right? But I found into a gene the identity of, I draw it because it's not my identity. Who knows, the Vikings when they lived, right? Poor people, right? They had this genetic mutation for a survival mechanism, practically, right?
And that's not the same as picking an individual in your family tree from back then that you're somehow trying to, crusade and validate today.
But I did start to watch some movies. I did start to watch some movies about Viking girls.
What did you learn there? I'm curious.
On YouTube. Because I don't have a TV for 20 years. On YouTube, I found some girls about Viking.
What did they say?
They're all warriors, just like me, just a different way. I studied karate when I was 14 years old, and because of my back problems, I had to quit because I had S-shaped scoliosis and fibromyalgia since I was almost 12 or so. And all my life until the age of 38, I have 2 hernias of disc. And because of overcoming depression, I have no more pain. But the broken bones are still there. Nobody fixed the broken bones, right? And it's absolutely amazing, right, that somebody tried to rob me one time in Italy. And I remembered, I was blue belt karate girl, and I was like, really, you want to rob me? You want to be beat up here? And he ran away. Right? So here's my Viking coming out from over 2,000 years ago to save my day and save myself, right? But it's just super, super funny how sometimes our identity, it is trapped in the past in a way or another, right?
Yeah.
It is trapped in the past. And sometimes, looking at my situation when my mom died at the age of 55 overnight, and I repeated her life. I practically got pregnant when she got pregnant. I got hernias of disc when she got hernias of disc. I was a teacher like her. I was a single mom like her. The moment when that moment came to say, you're going to die like her, I said, no. No. That's it. Right? So she died at 55 overnight from a condition connected to depression. Her liver practically exploded because of this gene, his hemochromatosis gene that nobody knew at that time that we have it, right? And I was diagnosed with the same disease at 38. I had a 9-year-old home child. And I said, I'm not going to leave this guy an orphan. This child is like, I'm not going to repeat this, you know? So these kind of lessons from the past, sometimes full of suffering, are bound to just swing us out of suffering. You know what I mean? To just throw us away. Don't repeat this crap. Repeat something good.
Yeah. Well, and it's also understanding what you did in that case is, I think, you know, you saw something in your mom and yourself, and I think you had to ask why, you know, this is happening.
Exactly.
And I think the first step is often that inquiry. I'm a big inquisitive person.
Me
I like
too.
questions.
Why has this happened to me?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think in a historical context, you know, you can apply that to a lot of things around us, belief systems, our social society, social structures, how we have a memory of certain things. I referred to the Civil War. We have a certain memory of what we think the Constitution was about, and I think that's contested, you know, right now especially.
Yes.
So I think that when you ask yourself, well, how do we get here, and why is it this way? Why do we believe this? And investigate what's behind that. I think you find a lot of times a lot more complexity, some illumination, as you found, and you start to question that, you know, maybe some of our immediate presumptions as what's absolute or normal aren't always true, right? And you start to see those multiple truths that you were talking about.
Exactly. I look at teenagers that are coming to me as a young adults, and their parents send them to therapy, right? They're depressed, they have anxiety, and the parents send them to therapy. The parents, you know, try to help them, theoretically speaking, right? Practically, I teach them to help them in a different way, to help them themselves, right? But the parent is desperate out there, doesn't know what to do, just go to therapy. And then they're coming to me and said, my mom is a narcissist. Ooh,
Wow.
where does this come
That's a big thing
from?
to say, yeah.
Yeah, because it's a big term out there, right? Everybody's a narcissist today, right?
Right.
So I'm like, no, your mom just didn't know how to help you. And she thought that somebody else can. Okay? Now, this is the right approach? No, it's not the right approach. The right approach is to learn how to help your own child and to get your own therapist to figure it out how to, you know, help your own child. That's the right approach. That's the approach I'm taking. But how easy it is for a child, for a young adult, to just label somebody. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
To just label
well, because
somebody.
it's so I have a big problem with labels. I agree. but what's interesting about that is that, you know, you're talking about a trendy term right now, right? Narcissism.
Yes, narcissist. Oh,
so everyone just throws it around. Everyone's got to be a
Yeah.
narcissist. You know what I find kind of relates in the history side? I often hear, you know, blah, blah, blah is not in the history books, or the history books don't say this. And I'm often wonder, what history books are you talking about? Because it is actually in the history books. You probably haven't read the history books, and that's why you're saying that. What you're really referring to, I think, is not in the historical memory that we have culturally, where we talk about it and represent it, whether it's in rhetoric and media, political rhetoric, movies, music. There are constant references, historical references in all kinds of stuff around us.
Yes.
That may or may not have what you're talking about, but that's not the same as history books, because if you look at historical scholarship, actual scholarship, it does cover a lot of these things. The scholarship is not written for a wide popular audience, so you may not get to it, but to say it's not in the books is a little bit unfair. It is in the books. You have to go find it. There are ways to find it. It takes more than looking at the New York Times bestseller list, for example.
Yes.
But what I mean by that is that we have to be careful, because just like people throw around the word narcissism, I think people throw around the term history books. And a lot of times I want to ask that person, well, what history books are you talking about, and how many have you read? Because you probably haven't if you're saying things like that, and that's okay. I wasn't born having read history books, so you have to start somewhere. But what I'm saying is we have to be careful how we use our language and what we're attributing it to, because
And
really
even
we should
how
be looking
we
at the stuff around
translate
us.
the history books, because
Yes.
I studied Latin and ancient Greek at university level. And you know something? Not always you can translate it word by word.
That's also true.
One word meant a whole phrase
Yeah.
of interpretation things, right?
doesn't translate
It's just
directly.
it doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't transfer the way you want to. And you know, I'm Romanian. I know Romanian, and you know, I was translating one time for a girl a couple of pages from English to Romanian. I actually translated the opposite. What here it means one thing, it means exactly the opposite in the same language at the same time, right? So here is we putting perspective and language into easily to trap us into our own truth.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. By the way, my dad is from Romania.
Oh, really? That's why you're on this radio show. I didn't know that, guys.
That was an inside track.
It's an inside trap, okay? Inside trap. I just got trapped, all right. Well, you are listening to True Secrets of Life radio show. Today we're talking with Raffi Andonian, celebrity historian, about the past is teaching us, but not trapping us. As a person who has lived in depression for 3 generations, lost all her family in depression, was suicidal at the age of 19, and succeeded to overcome depression in just a few months through programs and mentorships that today I run, by the way. This is how good of a historian I got to run the programs that got me out today, right? I have noticed a lot of people are being trapped in the past, right? And it's so easy to be trapped in some kind of maybe even stupid identity like me, Vikings today. Right? Or something, you know, that you're trapped by generations and generations, right? It's so easy to be trapped. And it's so hard to sometimes see different perspectives of truth, right?
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
so hard to see different perspective of truth. So here is how the past is always teaching us. And if we don't get it, if we don't get the lesson, it's so easy to repeat the mistakes and to go into that circle of thinking over and over again. Like, for example, for my family, the circle of thinking was life is hard. That was it. I made that true for 38 years of my life. I was looking back into like how this all works, and I was like, damn, I believe that since the age of 3, and I made that true. How horrible to make something true like that, right? So we are going to have a short break in about a minute. For everybody here that just tunes in, stay tuned. We're coming back with Raffi Andonian, discussing about how the past is teaching us and not trapping us.
Welcome to GoingSoloTravelers.com. Going Solo Travelers is about connecting, making new friends, exploring, and enjoying new fun times together. Laughter and the excitement of seeing and exploring something new creates memories that will last forever. Come join us on GoingSoloTravelers.com.
What are the secrets to a happy and successful life? Well, Ana Lennyr, family relationship and antidepressant expert, will share with you true secrets of life to help you overcome heartbreak, anxiety, and depression, and to live a life that you deserve and desire. Her philosophy is simple: master the game of life so you'll never be trapped in pain or hurt again. Ana can be heard nationwide on the True Secrets of Life radio show on the My Genre Radio Network at 8 a.m. and again at 3 p.m. To listen to her show, go to TrueSecretsOfLife.com.
Back to True Secrets of Life radio show with Ana Lennyr. I am a family relationship and antidepressant expert, and today we're discussing how the past is teaching us and not trapping us. And this discussion will have it with celebrity historian Raffi Andonian, because I think it's very, very important for all of us to understand how easily we can get trapped by the past.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the celebrity historian shout out.
Hey, this is who you are. This is who you are. For everybody that wants to get in touch with Raffi, go to truesecretsoflife.com. We will have the entire show there to re-listen to, and we will have a button to get in touch with Raffi, because I think you have some amazing programs, and what you're doing is absolutely every day something different. Okay.
That's true. I'm always doing something different.
Everybody, excited about history. Okay, I think it's absolutely amazing to get in touch with you. You even have a program, right? You have a program?
I do. There's all kinds of stuff I have, but probably the easiest way is you go to celebrityhistorian.com, and it kind of gives you a link to all my programs. Or, of course, they can get in touch with me from your site.
Our button will be that
the button will go there? Okay, yeah. I do have a program. I do a few different kinds of programs. The one I host is on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire. And, when they go through your site to my stuff, they'll see that. And that is a show we call Cleo the Muse, which is a reference to the ancient Greek muse for history. You see her often depicted on monuments. You might not realize, but you see her.
I do, because I study Latin and ancient Greek.
Of course, I studied Latin in college too. I was going to say that. So exactly, you know what I'm talking about. But the idea is twofold. One, I like the concept of musing, because I think today a lot of times we're just screaming at each other.
Yes.
And rather than screaming, musing is a different tone and demeanor. It's more reflective and curious and inquiring before it jumps to conclusions, right?
True.
And so I made the tagline of the show, challenging the present by inquiring the past. So
how about
you
that?
ask questions about the present, by looking and inquiring the past, right?
Yes,
and so it's kind of what we're talking about here today.
Yes, and you don't get trapped by it. You are learning lessons. You're seeing different perspectives of truth. Right? Yep. Like, for example, I went back, I studied psychology over 20 years ago to help myself because I was suicidal at the age of 19. And that didn't help too much, I have to tell you the truth. I joke today that I got into the university as a chicken and I came out as a cow with a lot of books in my belly. But no, I was still suicidal and depressed for another 16 years of my life, for goodness sake. That's how it worked, right?
That's great.
Yeah. But at that time, depression was not considered mental illness. And I was shocked to see that in 20 years, everybody is called mentally ill and there is some kind of problem, mental problem with you. And I was like, where did this come from? And then I went back and I said, oh, it came from the people who didn't know to fix this. We had antidepressants for over 20 years. Right? They don't fix this.
Interesting.
We have psychologists and therapists and all of the things for over 20 years. They didn't know how to fix it. If I would know how to fix it, I would have fixed myself 20 years ago. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was the top of my class. Mm-hmm. Right? And everybody, when I didn't want to pursue a profession, they said, why? I said, I'm as suicidal as my client. What am I going to do? Meet on the bridge who jumps first?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I mean, let's face it here, right? So here is what is the truth. Sometimes we don't inquire. And many people, they don't know that depression is deep, heavy, and unresolved emotional wounding that they can track, very simple, by going deep down inside them with strategies, with skills. They can resolve and they can let go of. Instead, they got brainwashed for the last 20 years that they're mentally ill and there is something wrong with them. How interesting that they've never got to that perspective of inquiring. What could be wrong with me, considering that half of the planet is depressed in a way or another? Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So what could be wrong with me? I'm normal. I'm a member of society. I go to work. I do my best. I just don't know how to do my best because I'm just struggling and in pain and in suffering. Right? But that inquiry that they never ask keeps them trapped in suffering.
What do you attribute? I'm curious. What do you attribute that shift in the last 20 years that you're pointing out? What do you think changed?
So the medical society and the psychological society failed us, right? If they would have fixed depression in the last 20 years, we wouldn't even know what the word means. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, if you think about it, AIDS was a big deal, right? It's not anymore.
Right.
Because they didn't fail us on this. It took a while until they fixed it, but
right.
that doesn't mean that we don't have that going on anymore, right?
Right.
So things like this that, when you fail in serving the world practically, because it's not the community, it's the world, right? You have to come to some kind of excuse. Why did you fail us? Oh, there is something wrong with you. What do you mean there is something wrong with me? I was born healthy. And most people were born healthy. I wasn't even born healthy, right? So I have that excuse. I wasn't even born healthy, right? But now it's like, I was born healthy. What just happened? Why I couldn't smile at the age of 7? Why I got suicidal at 19, right? There is something wrong with you. What? There is nothing wrong with me, right? So here is, it's easy to slip into these traps of, I call it brainwash, being brainwashed, and then not wanting to get out because you don't know where it leads you, right? So you fail every day. As I say, when you're in depression, you fail absolutely every day. And you're probably afraid of getting success out there, to be successful, to get out, because you don't know how that looks like. What do you mean to be happy? Smile. Oh, I don't smile. I'm emotionally numb, right? So here is how we keep ourselves trapped in our own past of suffering and pain. Just because we don't inquire, exactly like you said, where does this come from? How can I fix it? How can I solve it? What if I will die tomorrow? Would I be able to fix it?
Right.
Right? And I see a lot of people that if they don't know what to do, specifically with their kids, the kid might be fine, might not be suicidal or depressed, but they have relationship problems, divorce problems, health problems later on, career problems, right? They can't find their true potential. They're going from college to college. And these are all signs of a depression unresolved. Because that's what it hides, true potential, right? So they think, oh, my kid is fine. The kid is not fine. He's spending thousands of dollars on divorces, on health problems, and on not finding, his own passion.
Right.
How interesting.
Right.
But there are entire sciences that they have researched this lately, including epigenetics. And epigenetics is the study of how your behavior and environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. So how interesting that, nobody was overweight 100 years ago. The things that is like, what just happened? Oh, we walked. We didn't drive.
Right.
How simple is that, right? So here is how the environment can cause changes in the way you think, in the way you behave, right? I'm looking at my son. He doesn't acknowledge a world without the internet. For him is nothing, it doesn't compute.
Yeah.
Right? And we were like library rats, right? And you are clearly one of those, like as a celebrity historian. I want to go and find the oldest book about the oldest thing and what they said and what the other person said. And, it's like, we're just those type of people. And they're like, oh, it takes more than 3 clicks. I don't want it. I don't need it.
It's true. But I would say, on the other hand, there's a lot of power on the internet for really quality information too, right?
Yes.
There's bad quality, but there's good quality too,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
sometimes, for example, those archives and things that in the past you'd have to fly over to access, you can access at least portions of them online. Not all, because there is, such massive collections at these places that people can't even imagine, like how long it takes to get that digitized. But you can access some pretty reliable stuff from, formal archives and stuff in a few clicks, which is pretty awesome. But on the other hand, with that additional access comes this, I think, additional, if you will, responsibility to filter and decipher, or discern what is the difference between that quality you can access at your fingertips now and some complete junk that is like just out there, unverified, that you can fall trap into reading, right?
Exactly.
The kookadoo stuff, right?
Kookadoo stuff. That's how I call it. The kookadoo stuff.
So you have to be careful with that, right? But I mean, there's kind of, pluses and minuses, and you have to be able to look at that. Now, I will say, I agree in that I still love the physical library. Part of it is the experience. There's something about the smell,
Yes.
But also, you can stumble into things that you wouldn't even think to search. And that's a big deal to me. Searching and browsing are a different skill.
Yeah.
Searching, you have to conceptualize the question in the first place to search, or the topic, or whatever it is. When you're browsing in a place like that, you can stumble into something that you never would have even thought of. And so if you're only searching, you're limiting the scope to what your mind can currently think of. If you browse, you can expand the scope beyond what your mind would have already thought of as the boundaries of possible inquiry.
Because you don't know what you don't know.
That's right. You don't know.
Exactly. So this is actually the way I get people out of depression.
Okay. So
You don't know what you don't know. Everybody says, I know everybody about depression. You know everybody about suffering from depression.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know anything about getting out of depression.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what you don't know. Right? So there is what you know, which is limited for every mind, every person out there. What we know, it's limited. What we know, we don't know, right? Like, for example, I don't know anything about being an astronaut. I don't know anything about that,
Sure.
right? I
Sure.
know there are people that, man, it's a whole thing, right? It's a whole lifetime of studying and all that. I don't know anything about that. And then there is the part of you don't know what you don't know, right? So here is practically why we have these discussions on this radio show, because people don't know that they don't have to suffer from heartbreak. They don't have to suffer from anxiety. They don't have to suffer from depression. If they just know a few tricks and tips, a few strategies to get themselves out.
Yeah.
Right?
I think what's interesting there, it kind of relates to our theme here about the past trapping you, because, I imagine what you know and what you don't know is influenced by what you've been exposed to in the past, right?
Yes, your environment too. Yes.
And as a result, you're letting that trap you if you're not willing to go into the arena of you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. And
Because-
that's uncomfortable.
That's right. And it's not based on your past. That's why you're unaware of it.
Yes.
So you've got to sort of try to transcend that, right? So
Yes.
whether it's browsing a library or having someone like you pushing them beyond what they know, I think that's really valuable, right? You have to be open to that, and you have to at least first acknowledge that whatever it is that the limits of your brain can currently conceive of are indeed limits, right?
Exactly.
And that's why searching is not the same as browsing. And I don't just mean physically in a library, but intellectually in what we're talking about.
Yes. And this is how the memory is formed. If you remember things from first grade or whatever, or from when you were 3 or 5 or whatever, you only remember memories linked to a certain level of emotion. When you were super happy, when you were super sad, when you were super shocked, right? When something happened and it shocked you, you don't remember every day that you lived since you were 5 years old or 3 years old.
Of course.
Right? I mean, imagine if you would have to do that, right? It would be exhausting, right?
Right.
But the memories are linked to the emotion that you put out there at that time,
Right.
right? So for me, my first memory in life is when my mom was crying by a window. Okay, that was like at the age of 3 or something like that. And I immediately believe that life is suffering. If my mom is crying by a window and she clearly can't escape the suffering, I'm never going to escape it as a child.
Interesting. You thought that at that time?
Well, this is how it worked for me, right? My mom is suffering. So that's how it all works. It's all suffering.
And those pieces add up.
And these
One.
pieces added up, 38 years of suffering. And why? Because of one memory. Because of how that one memory trapped me. Right? I never even looked for mentors and for people to get me out. I didn't even believe it's possible. I thought that happiness is in the movies. I said, it's happiness is only in the movies because the actors have to pretend. They're probably not happy either. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
This was a whole belief that was holding me anchored down, and I almost died to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But what's amazing is that we're discovering with the internet that you have mentioned all the time, right? We're discovering exactly how this works. And I like the experiments of Dr. Emoto, who has experimented with water, with simple particles of water. and he took different drops of water and he just exposed them to feelings, exposed them to environment, exposed them to words like, I hate you, water, you're horrible, right? And another one that he said, oh, I love you, you're amazing, right? And by freezing them, he has noticed that the particles materialize into horrible, when you spoke horribly about the water, or amazing particles with a pattern and with like a drawing and with like art in it when you spoke positive to the same water. And we are 63% water. Our brain is over 70% water, the same our heart. Imagine what this suffering can do to us.
Mm-hmm.
Kills us from the inside. Just breaks us. Very simple. And how easy it is to get trapped in this suffering mode.
But I suppose, to your point, because it's malleable like that, you're saying that you can change that.
Yes, and we can change that. So, for the ones just joining us right now, you're listening to True Secrets of Life radio show with Ana Lennyr. I am a family relationship and antidepressant expert, and we're having a conversation about how to learn from the past and not be trapped by it with our celebrity historian, Raffi Andonian, who is coming here to join us, okay, to tell us how easy it is to get trapped in a past that we probably don't even know we get trapped into, right?
Right.
I mean, we do this unconsciously, and we just keep repeating and repeating and repeating. And this, for me, it's amazing, because this is the definition of depression. Keep repeating what is suffering and pain, and not having the courage to look to what you don't know, right?
That's right. That's right.
And, we talked about the internet and how it comes with help and responsibilities, right? How
Yeah.
it comes with both.
Yeah.
Every single thing in life comes with both. Like, I looked at this COVID situation that we maybe we passed, maybe we didn't pass yet, right? If you think about it, over the last 2 years of COVID we had, did it bring so much horrible things, or did it open up a lot of things that we need to fix in our society? Did it help or did it hurt?
Well, it's both, right?
It's
it's
both,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
But how easy it is to get trapped. It's like, it was horrible.
Right.
It only hurt us all.
Right.
Right? And you probably have a lot of examples in history like that.
All the time.
Where,
Absolutely.
Yeah, where, the same thing, it hurt some people, it benefited others, including system changes, entire system changes. Like, I'm Romanian. For us, it was communism, right? I was 12 years old when the communists went down and the Soviet bloc and all of that, right? How interesting of a changes they were. And some people got more hurt than during the communist system. Because this is how it works. It both sides. It's like a blade with,
It is. I mean, we were talking about the Civil War earlier, and I think of the Civil War right now too. I mean, in the United States,
Yeah.
it's horrible in the sense that you have 600,000 plus people that are killed or die as a result of the Civil War. But on the other hand, you have the end of slavery, in the United States as a result of the American Civil War.
Exactly.
So, you can get into more details, as to good and bad things that come out of it, but that's a really obvious big example right there,
Everything that happens has a plus and has a minus.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for those who are wondering what is of a minus of getting out of depression, because everybody said, what's the minus about it? And for me, it's like drama does not compute anymore. Everything that's dramatic and has drama, family drama, any kind of drama, you're like, I really don't understand it. It does not compute anymore.
Interesting.
Right? Because you live the dramatic life of every minute of your life. Right? When you got out of it, it's like you're just totally numb to drama. I can call it anywhere and everywhere. Like, oh, God, you're being dramatic here, you're being too dramatic there, you're being, because this is how it is when you live a dramatic life. So yeah, getting out of depression has its minuses. You cannot compute drama, okay? You got to be able to recognize this everywhere and anywhere, right? And it's just, you're not going to be able to attach to it anymore. So for anybody that loves drama, please stay in depression, because you're never going to experience it again.
I love it. Yeah, that's funny. You know what I think of? I think of in terms of economics. Is one of my backgrounds too. And you know, in economics, you have what's called an equilibrium, you know, and so yeah, people know supply and demand, and if you were to draw a graph, now it gets more complicated than that, but in the most basic sense, an equilibrium is a balance of things, and as you move one way, there's pluses, but then there's minuses, right? And you move the other way, you get more minuses, but you get pluses, right? Now, equilibrium doesn't always mean it's 50-50. Sometimes equilibrium is 80-20, or it doesn't matter, you know, but there has to be a balance. The scales have to balance, but anytime you do that, they always come at trade-offs. That's the other key term. So when you do something, there's always trade-offs. The question is, are you willing to make those trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
Is acknowledging the pluses and minuses of these different truths. You were talking about multiple truths earlier.
Yes.
And each avenue, I imagine, has these different trade-offs. And you choose which trade-offs you make, so you find that you arrive at the equilibrium that you want to be present at.
Exactly. Do you want to hold on to suffering, or you want to trade that in for changing your life? Right? Because if you don't trade it in for changing your life, it's hard to find your true potential. It's hard to be happy. It's hard to make your family happy. Right? Are you holding on to misconceptions about how love is supposed to be, how relationships are supposed to be? Or you're learning from experts how the truth is, a different perspective, and then you can build amazing family relationships and find your true love and true partner. Which one you going to do? Where are you going to be? Right? I had a client the other day who she came to me. Is like, oh my God, my parents and my husband are all going to die in the same year, because the husband has cancer and the parents are 90 years old, and I'm already depressed. I said, okay, these are the options you have. You can be depressed about it, even if you know about it, right? Or you can start believing that, listen, your time with them has ended. They did their best, okay? They don't want to leave you, but they gotta go, man. The clock is ticking. It's not their decision anyway, right? So here is, you can step into a different perspective to move on, or you can stay in the perspective like, I'm stuck. I'm always stuck, right? And guess what? After they die, you're gonna be more depressed.
Right, right.
Right? How about every single day from now on till the end, you give extra attention to your parents and your husband? Just like living the last second. How about that? How about thanking your husband for being with you for so many years? Thanking your parents for doing their best for so many years? How about looking at that side as like, oh my God, I had an amazing life with you all. Maybe now it's time to go by myself in a different journey.
Well, I think what's powerful there too is there's a notion of finite time, which is affecting their ability, or affecting.
But nobody's immortal.
Right, right. But you pointing out that there is, you know, when you said as if it's the last second, you know, you're acknowledging that time is finite instead of fighting against it, which is why someone maybe could be depressed. I mean, I'm not the expert, but I'm just and I'm thinking that that's a very valuable perspective. And for me, I know this is not everyone, but for me, that comes from historical stuff again, because when you study history and you look at, of course, generations come and go, and, you know, if you worked in high conflict places like a battlefield, you know, you're dealing with death quite often. And so it shapes your perspective from a young age. I started working on a battlefield when I was 19 years old, to see that that time is finite. And when you realize that time is finite in a way that you're forced to confront as opposed to pretend is not the case, it makes you live differently. It makes you live in a way that you cherish and try to milk what you have now, such as in your client's case, because you don't have to contend with and fight against this pretend notion that, oh no, it won't really end. And then now there's a schism in your head, and that maybe leads you to be very sad about it. And so I think if you acknowledge that and it's constantly around you as a truth, then you're going to live that finite time with anyone, including yourself, very differently.
Yes, yes. And it's very interesting you mentioned that, because one of my friends said that the best thing that ever happened to me is that my mom died when I was 26 years old. I said, you grew up and you became who you are today at an accelerated pace. None of us who still have our parents alive made it to your level. I said, I never looked at it this way, but from the outside, from the friends that they knew me, to tell me that, oh my God, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to you. It's like you're way ahead of all of us in life at this age just because of that one event. How interesting perspective, right? Of plus and minuses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose, I say sometimes an adversity is opportunity. Exactly. It sounds like that person recognized that. Exactly.
So we're coming towards the end of our show today. I would like you all to go to truesecretsoflife.com and see this entire interview with our celebrity historian, Raffi Andonian, and also get in touch with him either on the button that's going to be on the website, truesecretsoflife.com, or celebrityhistorian.com.
Yes.
That's it, because he is a celebrity historian here who was coming in to help us to discuss from two different perspectives, an American perspective and an European perspective from somebody in depression, the one secret of life that I'm very, very passionate about. The past is teaching us and not trapping us. And if we get trapped by any kind of past, our own past, our generational past, from our, generations of suffering and pain, and trust me, we had a bunch of suffering the last 2,000 years since Jesus died, right? If we keep doing this and with no inquiry and with no, changing our comfort zone and go beyond what we know, we're going to get trapped. And I see a lot of our clients that I have getting trapped into mini Jesus trap. That's how I call it. When everybody's got to suffer and sacrifice for somebody. Why? Jesus died 2,000 years ago. He already did this job. You don't have to repeat it.
So you call that mini Jesus?
Mini Jesus trap.
I haven't heard that one before.
You never heard that before? I must have invented it. So, Raffi, anything else you would like to tell your audience?
I think it's really informative. I mean, it goes to show you, I think, that this conversation, the way that it unfolded, the way that a historical perspective can really help shape, a lot of things. History to me is not just trivia and factoids and names and dates. I didn't refer to names and dates here, right? It's a way of thinking. There's this thinking historically. There's a certain way of inquiry, acknowledging multiple truths, acknowledging change over time, and acknowledging contingency, which I think contingency very much connects to what you're talking about as well, because you realize that the future doesn't have to be a certain way, and that's part of what contingency is about. And so it goes to show you the value of history and the way you think, and how it can positively impact your understanding of the world around you and yourself without having to memorize names and dates the way you did in elementary school.
Exactly. With learning from the past, but not getting trapped in it.
Exactly.
So thank you for coming to our show. For everybody that hasn't had the chance to listen to the entire show, make sure you go to truesecretsoflife.com and get in touch with Raffi, especially if you are one of those historian people that loves everything about history. He has programs for that. So thank you for joining us today. And don't forget, you deserve to live the life you deserve and desire. The past is only teaching you, not trapping you.
You're listening to WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network, Singles Talk Radio channel, where we take a lighthearted and candid approach to discussions on the journey of relationship loss, divorce, parenting, being single, relationships building, dating, and yes, sex. Join our listeners and begin living your best life.